Welcome to Business Unmuted, thanks to our sponsor Virtue Motors, one of the UK's largest motor retailers, representing some of the world's best manufacturers of cars, vans and motorcycles. Check out its website at virtuemotors.com. I'm Graham Robb and I've owned Recognition PR for 35 years. We have 75 clients in multiple sectors across the UK, and between them they turn over around £6 billion and have 30,000 staff. So we're at the forefront of the business community and perfectly placed to discuss the economic climate. Today, for Business Unmuted in the studio, we have Ben Quaintrell, founder and managing director at My Property Box in Darlington, which offers an end-to-end property service for landlords. It also has a estate agency, and Ben invests in property himself. Down the line on the issue of property is Peter Mitchell from Angels Media, which publishes several online news magazines, including Property Investor Today. And moving away from property, we have Tabor, founder and CEO of TUBR, a predictive analytics platform helping business leaders turn data into action. So let's start with the issues that we're facing in business this week in January 2023. And Peter Mitchell, first, you're publishing, Peter, you're very interested in property investments and you've got lots of titles to do with property. What do you think your readers feel about the start of the new year and the economic prospects?
Well, it's very interesting, Graham. I would say it depends who you talk to. And even since the beginning of the year to now, there's been a slight shift, I think. In general terms, running up to the new year, the forecasts for 2023 were very, very gloomy. There was one or two commentators predicting a property crash, and devastation and cost of living explosion and further interest rate rises and all of that sort of stuff. Whereas in actual fact, language is kind of more moderate now. People have expressed confidence in slightly more stable economy. I know that it's likely that come February we might get another small base rate rise, but generally the feeling is that's already been factored into fixed rate mortgages. So I see a kind of cautious confidence, and any drop in property prices to be perhaps more of an adjustment, a correction following the post-pandemic boom. So I think cautiously optimistic.
And Peter, I see that as well. I've told people about the number of people we act for in my business, and that's the reflective sentiment, I'd say, of the first 2 weeks of the year. A surprise to me. I wasn't thinking that's what it would be like over Christmas, but when we got back, that's what we got. And you talked about interest rates and the rate of growth for house prices. It's only the rate of growth that's fallen, but house prices are in fact still growing. The data was published today, Wednesday the 17th, and it showed that house price growth had dropped from 4.6% to 2%, but still growing.
Still growing year on year. I mean, and we saw a drop in November, we saw a drop in December, but the drop in December was half the rate of the fall in November. So I mean, overall, you're right, year on year, but monthly we've had these little blips, but that seems to be steadying off now. And I think sellers are confident enough not to drop asking prices. And the other thing to remember is, there is a regional difference overall in the property market. I mean, I think London has seen greater falls month to month than the Northeast, for example.
Yeah, and there have been regional differences in other markets as well, just to expand out of property. The unemployment rate is still quite high in the Northeast, but it's below 5%. And it's 3.7% nationally and 4.7% in the Northeast. But the fall in unemployment in the Northeast is the largest fall year on year that there has been in the country. So it's down further. It seems to be there is a bit of a levelling up, and I'm going to ask Ben this as well, but in property, if you take London out of the equation, do you see that provincial towns are starting to become a little bit more desirable than they were 3 or 4 years ago? Well, you first, Peter.
Right, sorry. I would say Yes, for a number of factors. Immediately after the pandemic, a lot of people wanted to move out of the capital. There was a flood of people leaving, particularly moving to the country or the coast, not so much to industrial towns. That's kind of trailed off a little bit, but there's still this underlying trend, I think, which is buoyed by an increasing ability to work remotely. I think that has helped. So, even in my own case, I'm sitting in my own living room in Northumberland, but I work for an organisation based in Beckenham. So, and I'm not unique. There are lots of people like me who work in this way.
I was at a major pharmaceutical factory today talking to the owners, and a lot of their white collar staff are working from home and going in a couple of times a week. Dash, I see you're at home. You run a tech firm, a tech business, TUBR. What's your view on that particular point that Peter's just made?
Yeah, so I think that what we found is being able to be flexible for our employees is really important. Most of our employees do like working from home. However, they also like having the engagement of a space where they can interact with people. So we use a co-working space as a place for us to gather and spend time, but it allows that hybrid working. It also allows us to have some flexibility as to where people work and where they need to be while also meeting their needs.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you in a minute, Dash, because I'm desperately eager to hear about your innovations in your technology. But let's just continue the theme of property, because we've got a property investor in the studio. Ben, you have now got to make your decisions. Your colleagues making investments have to make their decisions based on yield and also property values. Now, if you look at interest rates, the predictions now are that interest rates aren't going to peak at 5% plus, but between 4 and 5%. And if you are to get, I looked online at the best savings rate you could get, which was just between 4 and 5%, depending on terms. If you had several £100,000 to spend on a property now, is there still the appetite to put it in the property or in the bank?
Absolutely. Before I come to that, I just want to mention I completely agree with Peter. But there's 2 points that because everyone refers to 2007 property crash, but it is completely different because this time rents and demand is absolutely through the roof, and second of all, the banks are still lending, whereas in 2007 they stopped lending. As an agency and an investor, particularly in the northeast, demand for rent is through the roof. So sometimes when maybe people look at interest rates and they're thinking they're becoming higher, what they have forgotten that actually yields and rents are absolutely at highest rates they've ever been. So, in terms of actual, like an example of that, is, say you've got a property investment in the northeast, a property say of 80,000, and you've had it on an interest-only mortgage, 75% loan to value, let's say, and you've had like a nice 2% interest rate, and you've been paying £80-90 a month. Now it's 4% and you're paying £180-90 a month, but that property is now renting out for £100 more than it did previously. So it's actually all relative at the moment. But the main thing is demand is through the roof. We haven't got enough properties to let in the region. And as you know, Graham, which you're very much promote, is all the exciting things going in the northeast. So yeah, I completely agree with Peter. All the investors that are very experienced and know what they're doing are very positive.
And the interesting thing you've noticed, and Peter runs national publications, that the geography of the investment in property is changing a bit, isn't it? The northeast and some parts of Yorkshire were no-go areas for property investors just a few years ago.
Absolutely, yeah. So obviously the yield's one thing in the northeast. Is one of the yields are a lot higher than London and other areas. I think the northeast now is one of the number one places to invest. We have southern investment from all over the country coming up here, moving up here. Some of them are actually moving up. Clients of mine now have moved up to the northeast to invest in Teesside, Tyneside. And it really does feel, I know we've got this recession over us, but it really doesn't feel like that on the front line at the moment.
There is also the question, when we looked at the growth figures, there was an infinitesimal but nevertheless discernible growth in the economy when the last figures were published. If that growth is not revised down or even is revised up, it will mean that technically we don't enter recession. And is your feeling on the ground that that is a possibility?
I believe so. I mean, again, what Peter says, I think I think all the property sort of experts are saying we've got one more maybe interest rate increase coming up, but everyone's predicting that will be it. Inflation's down this month. So, I don't know why the media don't promote that, but it is down, which is good news. So hopefully, I agree. Maybe this recession isn't going to last as long as we think.
Okay, we'll come back to property in a minute, because it is all about, a lot of our economy is related to property. Maybe too much, that's a question for you both in a moment. But so much is needed in the space of innovation. When the Prime Minister gave his speech at the beginning of this year talking about the economy and the prospects for growth, and he did say that one of his 5 pledges was growth in the economy, he said it would be delivered through innovation. Now, Dash, you are using technology to innovate. How are you doing it, and how can people use the service that you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So for, over a decade, we've been talking about big data, collect more data, do a lot of things with your data. But in fact, only about 1% of companies can actually use those tools that are out there. And a lot of companies still don't really understand what they can do with data and how that's going to drive their bottom line. So what we're doing is we're helping companies be able to use tools like machine learning or AI when they don't have enough data to use those as they stand right now. We're innovating by using physics-based methodologies as opposed to statistical-based methodologies. And it's quite useful because even a small takeaway shop could start to understand what they need to do to drive higher margins and higher revenue, where maybe they wouldn't have been enabled before.
Now, you also fill the gaps in data intelligently. The machines start to make some assumptions. Give us an example of that.
Yeah, so I think the best way to explain it is we actually deconstruct the data. So if you think about an area or a space or what you're trying to predict as a system, it's basically an ecosystem. Data all relates to each other in different ways. It needs to be connected in certain ways in order to find those insights that help you drive your business. And that can be quite hard to do, particularly if you don't have data science teams or data analyst teams. So what we do is we basically deconstruct that data and bring those, I like to call them impact factors, together so that you can get a profile of your data that is actually, I understand what's going on, and I also understand what changes I can make in order to run my operations better or order differently, or whatever that might be, so that people that can actually get insight when data doesn't have to be scary, but sometimes it feels that way.
Ben, you run a property lettings business. To what extent do you rely on data, and what data sets are you calling for when you're talking to your team?
Data is key, like Dash said, every form. So not only in running the actual business itself, but actually from an investment point of view. And I've spoken to companies that do a lot of the data scraping, particularly from an investment point of view. You can scrape the data off portals like Rightmove. You can put in what yields you want. So it's very clever if you use it correctly, and it's becoming more and more used by businesses in property and investors.
And Dash, is that the kind of use of data that you're helping your clients to achieve?
Yeah, to be honest, the data sources can come from all different places. So we're pretty, data agnostic. A lot of the things that, a lot of times you can scrape data or you can pull data from, wherever you're collecting it from, and it has gaps in it. It can be sparse. And we help with that data quality element of that. So yes, we're pretty open to having discussions based on what problems people are trying to solve.
Now, you're Yorkshire based, aren't you?
Yes, Sheffield.
Tell us about your team and how you've collated people together and recruiting people to get the expertise you need.
Yeah, so we're a team of about 4.5. So we're quite small, but we can do a lot with what we have. And basically, when I started hiring, I'd spent a lot of time in South Yorkshire. And when I started hiring, I just found that we were getting the best talents out of the region. It's great because in Sheffield, you have the 2 universities, and lots is going on in the startup eco space. So Yeah,
Dash,
Yorkshire's where it's at.
you've got this lovely, compelling American accent. Why are you not doing this in Silicon Valley? Why are you in South Yorkshire near Sheffield doing this? Tell us about the virtues that you have of being where you are.
I think like South Yorkshire is just an absolutely wonderful place to do business. I think there's lots of very honest people. I think that you have lots of good conversations, and everybody really wants to grow the region, which makes it very compelling to be there. I moved to the UK about 12 years ago, so while I haven't lost my accent, I'm very much at home here. Although, my American family thinks I'm British now, and Brits think I'm American, so I'm just kind of stuck in between both places, I guess.
Well, my daughter's gone to live in America, and she's working in data in a bank, so I think we've had a swap. Thank you very much. Yeah. By the way, if people are interested in getting in touch with you, the website is TUBR, which is TUBR.tech.
Yes, that's correct.
That's great. Now we'll just round up where we started, Peter. Peter, you've got these magazines that feature a lot of investment, but there's a lot of innovation going on in property. I'm full disclosure, I'm slightly involved in one of the development corporations here in the northeast of England at the Redcar Steelworks site, the South Tees Development Corporation. But that is a mayoral development corporation, and the new Levelling Up Bill, which is currently going through Parliament, allows mayors to create development corporations, and the mayor in Teesside has created 3: Middlesbrough, Hartlepool and South Tees. There is one that Sadiq Khan has at the Olympic site, and there is one that Andy Burnham is about to start in Manchester. The idea of a development corporation is something that has to gain some traction. There's some good examples here. Do you think that your magazines will be interested in telling readers about it, and do you think that your readers maybe want to see innovation of that kind?
Well, Graham, you will remember as well as I do the old development corporations at Teesside UDC, the Northern Development Company, which became One Northeast.
That's right. And the Tyne and Weir Development Corporation as well.
And the Tyne and Weir Development Corporation, indeed, is back as far as that. Very much so. I think it depends upon their parameters, depends how they're set up. But if the four councils at the north of our region agree to a single mayor, and one comes up on Tyneside, we'd have Tyneside and Teesside with active development corporations. That can only be good for the northeast of England, surely.
I think
because
so.
It focuses the strategy, and it gives it also gives a focus for investment, where returns will be higher, and it means we can concentrate on clusters, hopefully tech clusters and green industries and that sort of thing, and look to the future and give this region a more prosperous future. I would hope so.
Well, that would be a good thing. And it is going to be possible very soon to drive from Liverpool through Manchester, through West Yorkshire to York, then north to Teesside, through North Yorkshire to Teesside, through County Durham, all the way to Berwick. And every part of that journey you will be covered by an elected mayor that has these abilities. That will be the case by May 24. That's quite a remarkable thing, a big change in devolution, really. And property is at the heart of it, because it's about land and place, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And it's, this is the geography that we live in. This is the geography that we love. And it's shaped by the places we work, the places we visit, the places we live. It's fundamental to our existence. And it's great to see some of the new developments, especially on Teesside. And coming up now in the Blythe area as well.
And we just have to hope that the British Volt decision today could blight that area, but I suppose it is possible that the factory that was canned by British Volt today could be used by another supplier, because there's so much going on in offshore in Blythe and other things that are going on. It would be a great shame to have an essential startup problem pollute everything and create contagion.
That's true, and that ground is now being cleared, so it's ready for development.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, Dash, Peter, Ben, thank you for coming in. Very positive and optimistic point of view in this edition of Business Unmuted. And don't forget, you can catch us another week. We broadcast live on Wednesdays on my LinkedIn channel and on various podcast platforms at the weekend. Do subscribe and follow. Thank you very much.